Hi, I'm author Tony Teora, and I wanted to introduce you to the wonderful world of science fiction and science fact. As a kid, I did a lot of reading, and I initially did it because my childhood was kind of difficult. Like most kids think, today's world, that it's difficult. But I really thought I had a difficult childhood. I used to sit on the porch and just read books, waiting for my parents to come home, and I found it fascinating. Reading these books gave me a chance to escape, a kind of tough childhood. And I found wonderful things in these stories. I read about alien worlds. I read about things that gave me hope for humanity. I read stories about technologies that were unbelievable. And this inspired me to continue on in school and go to engineering school. I ended up going to Rutgers University and studying electrical engineering. And it was no longer science fiction, it was science fact. But I also found that extremely fascinating. My first job out of school was working for a company that built electronic toys in Korea. So this adventures that I read about in the books, I started living an adventure. I lived 3 months in Korea building radio control toys. And this was like fascinating for me. Most kids, they just get to play with the toys. I actually got to build them, play with them, and get paid for playing with them. And this later on moved into other really cool and interesting work. The technologies that I learned with the radio control toys got me working with the military on satellite systems. And there I traveled, all over the United States. And then later, because of that background, I ended up traveling overseas. Traveling to countries like Japan, Singapore, all over Asia. I even decided to take an adventurous job traveling on the ships teaching computer science. I don't think I would have ever lived this life or decided to do all this crazy stuff if it wasn't for all the books that I read. Now, some people might think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think my parents probably wondered why I was traveling all over the place. But I really enjoyed it. And to show you some of the crazy trips and travels I had, there was one time I was stuck in Africa off the Indian Ocean. And they were going to travel to Thailand, but my contract said I could fly back to Japan, where I was living at the time. So I got on a helicopter, we flew midair, got the thing refueled, 3 hours to Mombasa. I almost died of mosquitoes in Mombasa. We ended up then going to Nairobi, and from Nairobi to London on my way to Tokyo. Now, we got stuck in London for about 5 hours, so I said, we'll have another adventure. So I took the tube into town and I had breakfast. Now, the waitress was trying to ask me where I came from, where I was going. And I can tell you, me trying to explain this to her, she really didn't even want to serve me food anymore. I think she thought I was nuts. But eventually I got back to Japan. Japan was one of my coolest adventures. I lived there for 10 years. I studied Japanese there. I worked for Japanese companies. I even did a small little software company in Japan. One of the best things that happened to me was I met my beautiful wife, Komiki, who I'm happily married to. We currently live in San Diego, but I love Japan. The things that I did, that I talked about earlier, I know it sounds crazy to say this is related to my reading, but I really believe it. And I started out as a young kid reading crazy stuff, like stuff from Robert Heinlein. I read Stranger in a Strange Land. I read all the Mark Twain stories. It was all great, and I have to say he's one of the best writers that I've ever read. If you haven't read Mark Twain because you think it's old or whatever, you have to go and read all his stuff. I'm probably one of the few people that you'll see on YouTube or television that tells you that they read the Star Wars book before seeing the movie. I was about 13 and a half years old at the time when the movie came out. We had one small movie theater in my hometown in Jackson, New Jersey, and I couldn't get a ride there, but the bookstore was close by. So I went out and I bought the Star Wars book. I read the book, and then later I said to myself, I have to go see this movie. And when I went and saw the movie, it just blew my mind away. The stuff about, Luke and Darth Vader and the Wookiee and the, R2-D2 and C-3PO and the scenery and the human component of that story, I just said to myself, even at that young age, that I have to be a writer. Now, it took some time. It took me many years, and I struggled a lot to be a writer. My first stuff didn't sell. I later stopped for many years, but I went back to it, and somebody read some of my stuff, and they inspired me, and they said, Tony, this is great stuff. You should finish this book. And I finished the book. I got it published, and here I am. I'm so excited about it. I think it's one of the best fields in the world, and I do think that these stories can inspire young kids to do great, wonderful things. I think it's a great part of humanity to have writers out there writing stories that inspire people. One of the things that I'm inspired to do right now, which I think is going to be awesome and very cool, is that me and my friend Paul Carrot and a team are going to go out and we're going to do a series. It's a 10-part episode of a documentary we're going to do, and the story is going to be called Alien Agenda, Fact or Fiction. Now, I happen to live in San Diego right now, which I also think is one of the best places in the world, but it's also one of the coolest places for stuff like UFOs, alleged alien abductions, underground bases. There are even some crop circles that they talk about out here. So Paul and the team and myself are going to go out and we're going to look at this from a scientific perspective. As I said earlier, I'm an engineer and I understand the scientific method, and we're going to go out there and we're going to analyze this with an open mind. We're going to look at those things that I just mentioned, and there's a couple things that that we're not even going to tell you until later. I'd rather keep that a little bit secret, and hopefully, regardless of what our findings are going to be, I think that you're going to find something very interesting. You're going to have a science fiction author analyzing this stuff, and we'll see where this comes out. Now, I want to thank Paul. Paul Garrett is the producer here, and he's done all the filming, and he promised me he wouldn't do anything stupid in the background because I'm sitting here at some screen, I don't know what's going on, so I'm hoping things are looking good, Paul, right? I want to appreciate you. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for watching this video. Take care.